No Game, No Life, Volume 6. When he was a child, he thought the world was simpler, that there was no contest you couldn't win, that hard work would be rewarded, that anything was possible. What he believed as a child, still foolish and ignorant, looking at the world with cloudless eyes. Was it wrong? Was it really wrong? In the cramped room, lit only by a faint lamp, the boy picked up a piece. He was the only figure there, but the boy looked intently at someone he knew he saw, deep in the darkness, and ruminated. A game, after all, was only child's play. Alone in the room, the boy imagined an opponent of perfect strength, and carefully he placed his piece on the board, just as he had done as far back as he could remember. Outside the room, terror and uncertainty, the despair of those who couldn't foresee even the day that would follow, froze the darkness of night. But inside the room, it was like another world. The faint light reflected with a burgeoning heat. Piece in hand, the boy ruminated once more. Once they grew up, everyone naturally drifted away from games. Why? Because they didn't have time? Because the world wasn't as simple as games? Whatever the reason, when people grew up, games were inevitably discarded as childish things. But the boy had never given this any thought. He simply considered his next move, and then once more placed his piece on the board. A child who went on playing games alone. He'd grown up, the subject of strange looks from everyone around him, yet the boy kept playing. After all, he didn't understand the reason for those peculiar stares, because if he squinted carefully into the darkness, he was there. Seemingly about the same age as the boy, he grinned boldly. The boy thought he was strong. He was always far ahead of the boy, and the boy would always lose, as if it was only natural, as if there was no chance he could win in the first place. And, feeling this unbearably entertaining, the boy challenged him again. As far as the others were concerned, the boy was alone, but to the boy they were two. That was all. In the darkness he never spoke, but he greedily sought out the moves that surpassed the boy's, the more perfect play. A more correct move, a more excellent tactic, a more advanced strategy. He merrily gloated from the darkness, and the boy answered back with a bold grin of his own. As far as others could see, the boy was alone, but he didn't care. The world was simple and clean. Win, lose, or draw. That was all there was, no matter the outcome. Though in the end he'd always lost. He'd ponder how to win next time. That was the boy's world. But the outside world trampled his personal world mercilessly. No warning. The dim room lit up dazingly, and the boy turned to the window. The night sky, which was supposed to have been shrouded in red, had gone white. As his parents burst into the room, screaming and grabbing his hand, the boy, terribly slowly, looked at it, connecting heaven and earth, a column of light. As his parents held him, shrieking something, their faces pale, the boy quickly reached out. The game wasn't over. Abruptly, he pulled the chessboard on which he'd been playing him close. And then, when he lifted his eyes, a light that seemed to sear his retinas. They were right. The world wasn't as simple as games. Awoken by the terrible smell, the boy came to this realization. Extricating himself from the charred arms of his mother, draped limply over him, the boy looked around. The scene left in the wake of the light that had violated his world, unreasonable and absurd, occupied his senses. The taste of blood in his mouth, the scent of scorched flesh in his nose. His ears rang with an abyss of silence. His skin baked with a burning heat, and his vision swam with the world utterly changed. Not a vestige of life remained. Rubble, clouds of dust, and exposed earth stretched as far as the eye could see. The boy turned his eyes to the sky. Amid a scarlet canopy that looked poised to fall at any moment, destruction rampaged. Gods battled over petty squabbles, without so much as a glance at humanity below. Just one stray blast. A whole world of people, to say nothing of the boy's own private world, obliterated in its wake. They were right. The world wasn't as simple as games, because the world had no rules. No rules. No one to call foul. No, even from the start. Suddenly, as the boy stood, visible through the smoke and dust, a shadow lit upon the revel. Wholly oblivious to the child, the silhouette casually, almost as an afterthought, noted the gaze directed its way. The boy gave to the one who had taken everything from him, the destroyer, and thought, yes, to them human beings aren't even players. It had swept away his, their, world without a care, as if it had been so much dust. This force of annihilation, through the flames and sand, he could just make out a shape like a person, but, recognizing that his gaze had been met, the boy turned and staggered off, dragging his feet behind him. Shaking off the glare he felt at his back, he walked far, someplace far away, to survive. Clutching the chessboard hard enough to break it, that day the boy became a man. This world is chaos, devoid of fate, filled only with random happenstance, unreasonable, absurd, and meaningless. Amid all that, where could one find time to play games? It had already been 6,000 odd years since the endless Great War had torn heaven and earth asunder and murdered the planet. Since the conflict for the throne of the one true God for absolute sovereignty over the world, a world in which the God who had claimed the throne by default, Tet, had set forth the 10 Covenants. A world on a board where force of arms was forbidden and all quarrels had to be settled by games. Discord. In this world, on the continent of Luthia, in the west, there was a city, the Provisional Commonwealth of Elkia, the capital, Elkia, a city which, until just a few months earlier, had been driven to the brink of doom, submerged in despair. The last city of Exceed's rank bottom, humanity. But now, things had changed. 3 countries, the Eastern Union, the nation of the Werebeast, comprised of countless islands, Ocean, the nation in which the sirens and Dampiers lived symbiotically under the sea, Evenheim, the nation where the angelic Flugel graced the heavens. Populated by 4 races, had been brought into the fold in a twinkling by the new king and queen just after their coronation. This city now found itself the capital of a sprawling commonwealth. The city's main street bristled with activity. Merchants and farmers who had just gained, or lost, vast resources. Craftspeople who purchased their goods. Each and every one of them traveling to and fro on foot or on horseback, haggling in voices overlapping without pause. A world where all quarrels and conflicts were settled by games. Indeed, that must sound quite simple, but the reforms were all too rapid. Humanity was swallowing up other races and multiple countries and games and forcing them into their fold. No matter how you might dress it up, all it represented was a policy of aggression. Spouting off about how it was a commonwealth, united in cooperation, was entirely too kind. Under such circumstances, the administration should have been in chaos, a quagmire of political wrangling among realms and races. Under such circumstances, that was what one could rightly expect. That is, if it hadn't been the handiwork of the king and queen, the siblings named Sora and Shiro, winning games with other nations, plays for dominion, swallowing them up whole and then achieving bloodless coups without anyone losing out. On the bustling street, here and there, one might find a few werebeasts. The preposterous concept of building a multiracial commonwealth to transcend the barriers between the 6 seeds, the X-seeds, little by little, subtle as it might be, was somehow showing progress. The world was changing, with this place, Elkia, at its center. There must have been some for whom this was unshakable premonition felt uncomfortable, but at the same time, people's hearts throbbed and their eyes glinted, for they were the witness to the revolution of the world. So, back on the main topic. As described earlier, the 10 covenants set forth by the one true God caused everything to be decided by games. As for that one true God, Tet, don't you wonder how he passes the days? How a more or less omniscient and omnipotent one true God lives? Today I'm going to do you a special favor and tell you about it. For now, in an alley of Elkia, being poked with a stick by a small werebeast girl.
Hey you, did you kick the bucket, please?
The one true God lies sprawled on the ground. Now that I think about it, amenities die if they don't eat, don't they?
So do I, please. Are you a dumbass, please?
At this insult, delivered with wide, innocent eyes, Tet pressed his face more firmly to the ground. The werebeast girl, with black hair and ears like those of a fennec fox, is Izuna Hatsutse, formerly the ambassador of the Eastern Union in Elkia, now the playmate of its king and queen. Pardon, their advisor. While this Izuna prodded him, Tet considered, though this might have been his first attempt at existing as a humanity, he really shouldn't have. So, just what was the one true God doing in a place like this? He was just killing time. Because being the one true God was deathly boring. You can say, I am the one true God, all you want, but looking out over the world gets old. On top of that, when you consider that Tet used to be the god of play, it was no wonder that he craved a game once in a while. Disguised as a member of the race he'd be infiltrating, he'd limit his power, wander the world, compete, and go home. That was what Tet, the one true God, did to fill his eternity. Today, on a whim, he'd planned to pay a visit to Sora and Shiro. Dropped by, after all. But it seemed that before he'd have a chance to drop by, he'd be dropping dead. He'd turned himself into a humanity, walking a few days without eating for the hell of it, and now look at him. Tet could only be impressed at the imagination-defying frailty of this race, but fundamentally, the one true God was terribly angry. That is to say, hungry.
Here, eat this shit, please.
With these words, Izuna sloppily extended one of the fish she'd bought. The one true God, eyes glazed as if finding himself in the presence of a goddess, stared back at Izuna, asking, Really?
Take the damn thing, please, before I change my mind, please.
Izuna's tone was strained as, drooling, she deliberately averted her gaze from the fish.
They told me we'll be taking kind of a long trip. I should go buy some shit to eat, please.
While Izuna muttered, Tet eyed the giant leather sack hefted on her back. So they asked you to get food for everyone?
Huh? For myself, please. Everyone went to buy their own shit, please.
That was werebeast for you. It seemed they needed that many calories to sustain those physical abilities of theirs.
I'm just giving you a little, please. They only gave me 300 N of snack money, so I couldn't get that much, please.
Tet understood that to mean 300 gold pieces, but he didn't point it out. He gratefully accepted the goddess's charity, but I don't have anything to give you in exchange. Oh, I know. You want to play a game? In response to Tet's proposal, as he sank his teeth into the raw fish, Izuna's ears perked. Want to play a game? Tet's expression when making the suggestion had triggered her werebeast sense.
You must be good, huh? Please?
I don't mean to brag, but I've never lost in my life. With one exception.
Bring it. Bring it, please. Why can't I beat you, please?
1 hour. They'd played cards until Azuna had racked up 9 losses and no wins. Ha ha. If you can't beat those two, there's no way you're gonna beat me.
Those two? You know Sora and Shiro, please?
Nice call. Tet laughed to himself. And then, looking at this young philosopher, he suggested, "Alright, let's do this. I'll tell you a story while we play."
You're just trying to distract me, please. Just like that bastard Sora, please.
Don't worry. That's not an issue. I'm gonna win this either way, you know?
I'll kick your little bitch ass, please.
Izuna glared hard, as if in doing so, she might see through his cards to discern his hand.
If you want to talk, please. I'm gonna win, damn it, please.
To this, he responded with distant eyes and a smile. But this story, you know, it's not one you hear every day. I'm telling you, I'm pretty sure you haven't heard this one.
I can't hear you, please.
She could totally hear him. Tet chuckled, dialing down his grin a bit. If you can't, then sure, whatever. After all, this is a myth that's never told. And, chasing after memories, inspired by the figure of the werebeast, sitting across from him, the one true god began his tale. Once upon a time. There was a stupid, big old war, they say. Hey, I'm jumping back into things with giving you the whole prologue. Man, I forgot how prologues in this book are a bit longer than the ones in ReZero, but they work about the same. Hey, since I got a little bit of attention from this one, you know who you are, decided to do a bit more of these. I myself am definitely interested in how the series ends, since there are only a couple more books after this one, as opposed to ReZero, which, oh my goodness, there are a lot of books that I've got to get through. But I love that series, so I'm going to continue it. This is actually being recorded after Volume 2 is finished. Like I said before, I'm going to try to only read one book at a time, and while there might be ReZero coming out at the same time, this was recorded before that, not counting if I remake some of my old ReZeros. Another thing to note, this is done on an old janky computer because my other computer blue screened and somehow it broke the bootloader or something. So I've been dealing with that for a whole day. This would have been recorded a few days before if that wasn't a problem. Gotta love it, man. Another thing to note, I'm only going to be making these end things every chapter from now on so that I don't bog up too much of the time. And as you can tell, I'm editing these more than I used to, which is to say, editing them at all, because I like the smoother sound of it. I just think it sounds a lot better. I'm going to keep it at that. If I have anything more to say, I'll probably put it in the description of this video. And with that being said, thank you guys for listening, and I suppose I'll see you guys next time. Bye.